The real estate agent lied, so I played the long game and unraveled his whole life. Hi, Reddit. This is a throwaway for obvious reasons, but I've been dying to share this story. It's long, full of twists and turns, and deeply satisfying if you're into tales of slow-burning revenge. So buckle up, because this is the story of how one man's lies ruined my dream, and how I patiently dismantled his life in return. The dream that took a decade to build. 7 years ago, I achieved what I thought was the biggest milestone of my life. I became a homeowner in Los Angeles. This wasn't just any ordinary accomplishment for me. I'd spent an entire decade working tirelessly toward this dream. Every late-night shift, every skipped vacation, and every quiet sacrifice was for this moment. I wanted more than a house. I wanted stability, independence, and the kind of security that only owning property in a city like LA can give. I wasn't rich, not even close, so I had to make compromises. I wasn't shopping for sprawling mansions or chic bungalows in Silver Lake. Instead, I focused on finding something small, something affordable, but crucially, something mine. No meddling HOAs, no communal bylaws controlling my choices. I needed a property with a freehold title, one where I could call the shots. After months of searching, I found it, a modest home in a shared block, but with that coveted freehold status. The real estate agent was a local, someone recommended through a friend of a friend. That made me feel at ease. I assumed someone with ties to the community wouldn't risk their reputation by lying. Turns out, I was wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. The shocking revelation: for the first few months, everything felt like a dream. I painted the walls, planted flowers, and began to settle into a new rhythm of life. Then came the knock on the door that changed everything. It was my neighbor's landlord, here to talk about insurance for the shared walkway. He handed me the policy documents, and my stomach dropped. The paperwork clearly stated that my property was part of a strata title, not the freehold title I had been promised. Strata meant shared ownership, communal rules, and the very restrictions I'd spent years trying to avoid. My supposed sanctuary was suddenly a nightmare. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Surely this was a simple mix-up that could be fixed with a few phone calls. But as I dove deeper, the truth came crashing down. I contacted my lawyer, who had handled the title transfer. He was just as blindsided as I was. We combed through every piece of paperwork, every email exchange with the real estate agent. The truth was clear: my property was never freehold. I'd been duped. What made it worse was how preventable it all seemed. The deception wasn't subtle, it was glaring. The listing had advertised the property as freehold. The agent had repeatedly confirmed it in emails. And yet, here I was, stuck with a strata title. My dream was crumbling around me, and someone needed to answer for it. Confronting the villain, armed with all the evidence, I demanded a meeting with the real estate agent. I wasn't going to let this slide. I had everything: the original listing, screenshots of our emails, even messages between him and my lawyer confirming the property's supposed freehold status. I thought that when he saw the mountain of proof against him, he'd own up to his mistake and make it right. But no. Instead, he smirked. He smirked. This man, who had blatantly lied to me and cost me my peace of mind, had the audacity to shrug and deny everything. "It must have been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "These things happen sometimes." I couldn't believe it. My frustration boiled over, and I demanded restitution. If he wouldn't admit fault, he could at least help me fix the mess he'd made. I suggested he handle the sale when the time came or cover the costs. It was a reasonable request, but he refused. All he offered was a token $1,000 to make this go away. $1,000 for destroying my dream. We ended up in mediation, but the results were the same. I had the right to sue him, and the mediator even encouraged it, but at the time, my health was fragile, and I couldn't face the stress of a lengthy legal battle. I walked away from the table that day, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The birth of a plan. I don't consider myself a naturally vengeful person, but this situation changed me. Every time I looked at the title documents, every time I dealt with the consequences of living in a strata, I felt the burn of his lies. I replayed his smirk in my head, his flippant dismissal of my pain. If he thought he'd gotten away with it, he was sorely mistaken. I started digging into his life. It wasn't hard. His Facebook profile wasn't private, which was a rookie mistake for someone with as many skeletons in his closet as he did. Through his posts, I discovered he'd recently gone on a boys on tour trip to Mexico. Pictures of him and his buddies drinking on the beach filled his timeline, and the timing was perfect, just a few months after he sold me my home. That's when inspiration struck. I wasn't going to confront him head-on. That would be too easy, too short-lived. No, I was going to play the long game. I was going to make him feel the same frustration, paranoia, and helplessness he had inflicted on me. The slow burn begins. On the 1-year anniversary of my home purchase, I sent flowers to his house. The bouquet was simple but elegant, paired with a note that read, "Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this, our special day. She has your eyes. Love, Elle." Every year, for 6 years, I sent similar bouquets. Each time, the message was slightly different, but always cryptic, always suggestive of some mysterious connection between us. On this, our special day, became a recurring phrase, along with references to a supposed love child. But I didn't stop there. Every few months, I sent postcards from Mexico, handwritten notes signed Elle with a little heart. Sometimes I included messages like, "Thinking of you" or "Wish you were here." They were subtle enough to be dismissed as a prank, but specific enough to keep him guessing. I imagined him opening those notes, his mind racing to figure out who Elle was and what she wanted. Was she real? Did she know something incriminating? Was she someone from his past? The ambiguity was the key to my plan. The less he knew, the more his imagination would do the work for me. The dominoes fall. For years, I didn't know if my plan was working. Then, 3 weeks ago, I got the update I'd been waiting for. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that the agent's life had unraveled. His wife had pieced together the significance of the yearly flowers and postcards. She realized they coincided with his boys on tour trip, the same trip where he cheated on her and brought home an STD. Apparently, he'd convinced her at the time that the infection wasn't his fault. But after years of mysterious messages, she finally confronted him, and he cracked. He confessed to the affair, and she left him. She took half his retirement savings, forced the sale of their home, and exposed him to their social circle. The fallout didn't stop there. Word of his infidelity and questionable business practices spread quickly. His reputation as a real estate agent crumbled, and with it, his career. Last I heard, he was couch surfing, working odd jobs, and struggling to rebuild his life. Reflections on revenge. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes. Late at night, I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember that smirk. That dismissive shrug. The way he treated my pain like it was insignificant. He stole my dream and walked away without a second thought. If karma needed a little help finding him, I was happy to oblige. In the end, I don't regret what I did. Revenge, like karma, is best served cold and with patience. Edit. For everyone asking, no, I never left anything traceable. Every postcard and bouquet was sent anonymously. If you're going to play the long game, you have to be smart about it. So, Reddit, what do you think? Did I go too far, or did he get exactly what he deserved? The aftermath, gossip, and gratification. After hearing about his downfall, I couldn't help but feel a sense of poetic justice. I didn't set out to ruin his life, I just wanted him to feel a fraction of the stress and frustration he had caused me. Yet the more I learned, the more it became clear that he was the architect of his own destruction. I simply lit the spark. Word spread quickly through our loose network of mutual acquaintances. It wasn't long before I started hearing tidbits about his situation from friends of friends. Apparently, his wife wasn't just furious, she was vengeful in her own right. She had confronted him in a spectacularly public fashion, airing out all his dirty laundry at a family gathering. The fallout extended beyond his marriage. His social circle, once robust, dwindled rapidly. Many of his former friends sided with his wife, disgusted by his lies and infidelity. And as if losing his family, friends, and career wasn't enough, his financial situation took a nosedive. With no income and no savings, he was left scrambling just to keep a roof over his head. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. This man, who had so confidently brushed me aside, was now experiencing the very powerlessness he had inflicted on others. I wasn't just satisfied, I was vindicated. The unexpected twist. As satisfying as it was to hear about his downfall, I wasn't prepared for the unexpected consequences of my actions. One day, out of the blue, I received a call from a mutual acquaintance. She'd heard whispers that the real estate agent suspected someone was behind the postcards and flowers. He hadn't figured out who. My precautions had worked, but he was convinced they weren't random. This mutual acquaintance, who I'll call Sarah, didn't know I was involved, but her call left me rattled. She mentioned that he'd been asking around, trying to piece together any connections between Elle and his real life. He was desperate for answers, clinging to the hope that uncovering the mystery might somehow repair the damage to his reputation. For a brief moment, I panicked. What if he connected the dots? What if he somehow traced everything back to me? But as I thought about it more, I realized I had nothing to worry about. Every note, every flower, and every postcard was sent anonymously. I had never used my name, never left any traceable details. He could dig as much as he wanted, he'd find nothing. Still, it was strange to think about him obsessing over my little campaign. For all his arrogance, he was now consumed by the same paranoia he'd dismissed as irrelevant when it was my burden to bear. It felt like the ultimate reversal of fortune. Moving forward, lessons and closure. In the months following his collapse, I began to feel a sense of closure. For years, my anger and frustration had consumed me. Every Strader-related headache, every reminder of his deception, had kept the wound fresh. But now, knowing that he had faced consequences, not just for what he did to me, but for all his lies and betrayals, felt like the closure I had been searching for. I stopped sending the flowers and postcards. They'd done their job, and prolonging the campaign felt unnecessary. He was already drowning in the consequences of his actions, and I had no desire to kick a man when he was down. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about justice. And justice had been served. As for me, I began to focus on moving forward. My house, flawed as it was, became a home again. I learned to navigate the strata system, found ways to carve out my independence, and even started making upgrades that reflected my personal style. It wasn't the dream I'd envisioned, but it was mine, and that was enough. A final reflection. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if the situation could have played out differently. What if he had owned up to his mistake from the beginning? What if he had apologized, or even just shown a shred of remorse? Would I have let it go? It's hard to say. But what I do know is this: his arrogance and dishonesty sealed his fate. He underestimated me, dismissed my pain, and assumed there would be no consequences. He was wrong. Revenge isn't always the answer, and I don't recommend it lightly. But in this case, it felt justified. This wasn't about petty payback, it was about reclaiming my sense of power in a situation where I'd been wronged. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that karma, like me, is patient. It may take time, but it always finds its target. Epilogue: what would you do? So, Reddit, I leave you with this question: what would you have done in my shoes? Was my approach too extreme, or did he get what he deserved? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And if you're ever in a situation where someone tries to take advantage of you, remember this: patience is a powerful weapon. Use it wisely.